Have you ever stopped to look at the dark, glossy glass jar sitting on your kitchen bench and wondered why a handful of dried brown dust costs $12? You pop the plastic seal, pour in boiling water, take a sip, and convince yourself that because the label mentions Old World European heritage or sustainable mountain farms, you are drinking actual quality. You are not. That morning ritual you rely on to kickstart your day is, for millions of Australians, a carefully engineered financial optical illusion. You are paying premium espresso prices for low-grade crop swept off industrial floors, spray-dried into bitter granules, and wrapped in marketing designed by corporate psychologists who know you are too tired in the morning to read the fine print. By the time you finish watching this investigation, you will know precisely which jar in your pantry is an absolute rip-off, why the most expensive option on the supermarket shelf scored dead last in rigorous independent testing, and how major grocery conglomerates manipulate local packaging laws to sell you chemical solvent decaf and glorified instant powder disguised as luxury cafe coffee. I'm going to walk you through 10 specific jars and pods sold right now across Coles, Woolworths, and Aldi that are quietly draining your wallet. We will dissect the lab data, name the multinational parent companies, and expose the massive price markups. Most importantly, near the end of this list, we will reveal the ultimate supermarket twist, a dirt-cheap $4 jar that utterly humiliated $12 premium brands in a double-blind taste test conducted by professional coffee judges. Before we call out the offender brands, you need to understand how the instant coffee industry actually operates, because the deception begins long before the jar ever reaches a shelf in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. Real coffee starts with two main species of bean, Arabica and Robusta. Arabica is delicate, complex, and full of aromatic oils, requiring higher altitudes and careful harvesting. Robusta is easy to grow, insect-resistant, packed with harsh caffeine, and tastes remarkably like burnt rubber and bitter wood. Guess which bean forms the backbone of cheap instant coffee production? Industry processors take these low-grade crops, roast them until any subtle natural flavors are completely obliterated, and boil them down under extreme pressure into a thick, tar-like liquid extract. From there, the corporate machinery has two ways to turn liquid slop into something that looks like coffee. The cheap, brutal route is spray drying. The liquid extract is blasted through high-pressure nozzles into a tower filled with scorching hot air. The water evaporates instantly, leaving behind fine, dark dust that tastes like scorched cardboard. To make it look like real coffee, manufacturers wet that dust again so it clumps into granules, a trick known in the industry as agglomeration. The more refined route is freeze drying. The extract is frozen into a solid sheet at -40 degrees Celsius, chopped into tiny jagged shards, and placed in a vacuum chamber where the ice sublimates directly into vapor. Freeze drying preserves more volatile aromatic compounds, but if you start with bottom-tier beans, no amount of advanced cryogenic freezing can turn garbage input into a gourmet output. Then comes the decaffeination circus. If you drink decaf instant expecting a natural, gentle process, prepare for a cold shower. Most mainstream decaf sold in Australian supermarkets undergoes chemical solvent extraction. Green beans are steamed and bathed in synthetic solvents like methylene chloride or ethyl acetate, the exact chemical found in nail polish remover, to dissolve the caffeine molecules. While the roasting process evaporates virtually all solvent residues down to legal food safety thresholds, manufacturers are not legally required under the Australian-New Zealand Food Standards Code to print the chemical extraction method on the jar. They simply label it decaf and let you assume it was washed in pristine mountain spring water. Finally, consider the economics of the supermarket coffee aisle. Coles and Woolworths do not arrange shelves for your convenience. They sell shelf real estate. Eye-level positioning, fancy embossed glass, metallic gold foils, and vague descriptors like intenso or reserve are designed to trigger a psychological connection between price tag and quality. Multinational conglomerates spend tens of millions of dollars constructing heritage narratives around brands that are actually produced in massive industrial facilities using cheap imported commodities. They rely entirely on the fact that when you walk down aisle 4 on a busy Tuesday evening, you will pick up the glossy $11 jar because your brain assumes cheap means nasty and expensive means good. Independent testing proves that assumption is dead wrong. Let us get straight into the 10 brands that are taking your hard-earned money. We are starting from the least shocking corporate tricks and moving step by step to the biggest supermarket illusions on Australian shelves right now. Number 10 on the list is Nescafe. Specifically, Nescafe Gold Freeze-Dried Instant and its iconic sister, Nescafe Blend 43. Positioned for decades in Australian kitchens as a reliable daily essential, the dark glass jar with the gold lid is marketed as Nestlé's premium tier option, sitting above regular Blend 43 on both the shelf and the price tag. It comes wrapped in polished language about rich crema and bold aroma. But when independent experts at Choice put Nescafe Gold through a comprehensive blind taste test, it managed a mediocre score of 76 out of 100, while sitting at a price point of roughly $7.50 per 100 grams. That is nearly double the cost of store-brand alternatives for a score that sat firmly in the middle of the pack. Then you look at Blend 43, which proudly boasts phrases like "grown respectfully" and 100% sustainable coffee beans right on the front of the tin. When pressed on these claims, Nestlé clarified that its global internal target is to reach 100% responsibly sourced coffee, verified by certifiers like Rainforest Alliance. That is a fine corporate goal, but printing 100% sustainable in bold across the front is a brilliant marketing shorthand for an internal target rather than an independent government audit. Nescafé is owned by Nestlé, a Swiss multinational giant pulling in nearly 90 billion Swiss francs a year across everything from baby formula to pet food. It is not a local Aussie brand despite decades of advertising built around red mugs and local mornings. A lower score in a blind tasting is not losing Nestlé any sleep, because the familiar gold lid wins over shoppers before they ever look for a scorecard. Number 9 is Moccona, specifically their classic dark roast freeze-dried glass jar. This cylindrical glass jar with its heavy glass stopper has sat in the treat-yourself section of Coles and Woolworths since 1960. Wrapped in old-world Dutch heritage branding stretching back to 1753. In independent testing by Choice, this exact Moccona blend scored 75 out of 100, tying for the absolute lowest score in the entire comparison test, at a whopping price of $8.50 per 100 grams. To put that in perspective, Woolworths' own home-brand freeze-dried coffee scored the exact same 75 out of 100 at just $4.00 per 100 grams. You are paying more than double the price for zero measurable increase in blind taste performance. Moccona is owned by JDE Peet's, a massive Dutch coffee conglomerate, majority owned by American giant Keurig Dr Pepper. In 2023, JDE actually dragged Australian family coffee company Vittoria to federal court, claiming Vittoria's glass jar looked too similar to Moccona's shape. The court threw the case out entirely. Furthermore, Moccona sells a classic decaf variety, and like almost every mainstream decaf on Australian shelves, the packaging does not state which decaffeination method was used. Most mainstream decaf in Australia is stripped using chemical solvents like methylene chloride. While roasting removes the solvent to legally safe trace levels, shoppers trying to avoid chemical solvent processing have no way of knowing from reading the label on the shelf. Number 8 is Republica Organic Classic Medium Roast. This brand positions itself as the ethical, premium choice on the supermarket shelf. But it earns its spot on our list because of one number that is impossible to ignore. In the Choice Blind Taste Test, Republica scored a bottom-tier 75 out of 100, tied for the lowest score in the entire test, despite charging an eye-watering $12.00 per 100 grams. That made it the single most expensive instant coffee in the entire test, costing more per gram than Lavazza, more than Moccona, and 3 times as much as budget options sitting right next to it on the same shelf. If you consume a jar a month, you are throwing away over $140 a year purely for fancy packaging and high-end ethical placement, without a single extra point of taste quality landing in your cup. It is a massive price premium backed by dead last results in a blind tasting. If you are already itching to check your pantry right now, hit subscribe. It only gets rougher from here. Number 7 brings us to Lavazza Prontissimo Intenso. Imported directly from Italy, wrapped in genuine heritage stretching back to 1895 in Turin, and priced at $11.58 per 100 grams. Lavazza did manage a respectable 78 out of 100 in blind testing, which is a solid result, but it still scored lower than store-brand options that cost less than half as much per 100 grams. The gap between imported Italian prestige and actual blind taste performance is something every shopper needs to realize before paying an import markup every single week. Italian heritage on the label is doing far more work on your receipt than it is doing in your mug once the branding is removed. Number 6 moves us into the explosive world of pod systems with Nespresso capsules. Coffee pods have invaded Australian kitchens, but the basic arithmetic is hidden behind convenient packaging. A standard capsule contains roughly 5 to 6 grams of actual coffee and costs between 55 and 80 cents per pod. Do the math and you are paying between $100 and $140 per kilogram for coffee, compared to $40 to $80 per kilogram for instant jars. Then there is the recycling catch. Nespresso runs its own collection network with drop-off points, which sounds fantastic until you realize it requires you to manually collect used pods and drive them to a boutique or post them back. Councils across Australia, including major city recycling systems, confirm plainly that coffee pods cannot go into your yellow-topped household recycling bin because they fall straight through the sorting machinery at material recovery facilities. Unless you personally transport those pods back, they head straight to general landfill. Number 5 is L'OR Espresso Aluminium Capsules. Made by JDE Peet's to fit Nespresso machines, L'OR promises supermarket convenience and French luxury at a slightly lower sticker price per box. But once again, the math reveals you are still paying upwards of $100 per kilogram for tiny portions of coffee wrapped in metal. Outside of specialised drop-off programs, these pods end up in the exact same municipal red-lid rubbish bins as everything else, proving that paying a fraction less per box does not solve the massive environmental and cost per kilogram penalty built into pod systems. Number 4 is Harris Coffee Capsules. Also owned by JDE Peet's, Harris is marketed as the down-to-earth, everyday value option with bright green packaging designed to signal budget-friendly reliability. But here is the illusion. Moccona, L'OR, and Harris are all owned by the exact same parent company, JDE Peet's. You are given the illusion of choice across 3 different shelf positions, but your money flows right back to the same multinational balance sheet while facing the exact same recycling hurdles at home. Number 3 is Starbucks Premium Instant Coffee. Since 2018, Nestlé has owned the global license to manufacture and sell Starbucks-branded packaged coffee outside of cafes in a deal worth over $7 billion. That means the Starbucks jar on your local Coles shelf is not roasted in Seattle, it is produced inside Nestlé's industrial global supply chain, the exact same corporate machinery behind Nescafé. In Choice's blind taste panel, Starbucks Instant was beaten outright by traditional budget brands, costing a fraction of the price. The green siren logo is doing all the heavy lifting on the price tag. Number 2 is Woolworths freeze-dried classic coffee. Sitting on the bottom shelf for $4.00 per 100 grams, this home brand option scored 75 out of 100 in blind testing. While it tied for the lowest score alongside Moccona and Republica, it costs a fraction of their price. It proves that while budget buys can save you money, cheap prices do not automatically mean high scores either. It simply highlights how absurd it is to pay $12.00 for the exact same 75-point taste result. Number 1 is Cafe Aurora Medaglia d'Oro Freeze-Dried Instant. Here is the ultimate corporate twist. Cafe Aurora is owned by Cantarella Bros, the iconic Australian company behind Victoria Coffee. Yet in choice testing, Cafe Aurora scored a low 76 out of 100 at $7.00 per 100 grams, while its flagship sister product, Victoria Mountain Grown, scored an outstanding 80 out of 100. The exact same parent company, using the exact same roasting infrastructure, selling 2 jars on the exact same shelf with completely different quality in the cup. The brand name on the front tells you nothing, only the blind score reveals the truth. Right, here comes the part that made watching this far worth it. We have dragged the marketing spin through the mud, called out the multinational parent companies, and broken down the ridiculous markups on shiny glass jars. Now it is time to look at the survivors. These are the 3 coffee products sitting quietly on Australian supermarket shelves that actually backed up their claims when independent coffee experts stripped away the logos, hid the price tags, and judged what was genuinely inside the cup. Best option number 3 on our list is a double entry that proves price tags are completely disconnected from reality. Coles Organic Freeze-Dried Coffee and Aldi Alcafe Gold Dark Roast. These 2 jars are grouped together because the independent testing data from Choice grouped them together in an absolute knockout result. In blind comparisons, both of these budget supermarket jars scored an impressive 79 out of 100. To understand why that number should make big-name coffee brands sweat, consider this. 79 out of 100 was the exact score awarded to a fresh, professionally brewed long black made from ground beans on a commercial espresso machine, used by the panel as their internal control benchmark. Think about what that actually means for your morning routine. 2 of the absolute cheapest options on Australian shelves, retailing for around $3.90 to $4.00 per 100 grams, delivered a blind sensory experience that professional coffee judges rated on par with fresh espresso. Meanwhile, jars sitting 2 shelves higher, charging $8 to $12, scored lower on that exact same scale. When you peel back the foil seal on either jar, there is no stale, dusty, or burnt Robusta odor. You get a clean, deeply roasted aroma with balanced bitterness and 0 harsh chemical aftertaste. Neither Coles nor Aldi is trying to sell you a fairy tale about 18th century Dutch grocers or faux Italian prestige. They are just dark glass jars sitting on bottom shelves doing the job at a third of the cost of their heavily advertised competitors. The only slight catch is availability. Aldi stock can fluctuate, and Coles Organic sometimes disappears during store resets. But if you see them, grab them without hesitation. Best option number 2 is Vittoria Mountain Grown 100% Arabica Instant Freeze Dried. When Choice ran their comprehensive instant coffee comparison, Vittoria took out the top spot across the entire board, scoring a remarkable 80 out of 100. That is 1 full point higher than the freshly brewed Control Espresso. At roughly $12.50 per 100 grams, it sits at a higher price point, but unlike the pseudo-luxury brands we exposed earlier, Vittoria actually justifies every single cent in the cup. Vittoria is a genuine Australian success story. This is not a local name licensed out to a Swiss conglomerate or a Dutch holding firm. Founded in 1958 by Italian immigrant brothers Orazio and Carmelo Cantarella, roasting out of Sydney's Haymarket, it remains entirely family-owned and operated across 3 generations. This is the very same independent company that stood its ground in federal court in 2023 when multinational giant JDE Peet's tried to sue them over jar designs and won. Managing Director Les Shirato and his team use high-altitude 100% Arabica beans, slowly roasted to unlock dark chocolate, sweet caramel, and bright berry notes that survive the freeze-drying process intact. When you pour hot water over these jagged dark crystals, you get a rich, aromatic crema and a smooth, clean finish that completely lacks the astringent bite of cheap instant slop. It is premium pricing done right. You pay extra, but you receive a verifiably superior product crafted right here in Australia. Best option number 1 is the ultimate supermarket dark horse, Bushells Classic Gourmet Instant Coffee. This is the humble jar sitting in almost every Australian supermarket that most people walk straight past, assuming cheap means terrible. They could not be more wrong. In a dedicated blind taste test conducted alongside expert judges from the Barista Basics Coffee Academy, Bushells Classic Gourmet was awarded first place out of 18 competing products. It thoroughly trounced Lavazza, embarrassed Moccona, outperformed Starbucks branded instant, and held its ground against a freshly pulled cafe espresso. Retailing at roughly $10.00 for a massive 200-gram jar, Bushells works out to an astounding 30 cents per cup. That is nearly 20 times cheaper than a standard cafe takeaway long black. Barista Basics co-owner and master judge Matthew G. openly admitted going into the panel expecting instant coffee to taste dreadful, only to be so blown away by Bushells that he began stocking it in his professional training academy for students. Owned by Australian company Fresh Food Services, Bushells is roasted locally at the historic Concord facility in Sydney. The cup delivers a full-bodied, smooth, classic Australian roast profile with zero sour acidity or lingering chemical harshness. It is an undisputed triumph of local roasting over bloated corporate marketing budgets, offering maximum taste for minimum outlay. Now that you know which jars belong in your trolley and which belong on the corporate hall of shame, here are 6 bulletproof rules to navigate the Australian supermarket coffee aisle like a seasoned investigator. First, ignore the front label and flip the jar immediately to check the unit price per 100 grams, because supermarkets rely on flashy graphics to hide atrocious value. Second, look specifically for the phrase "roasted in Australia" on the back, rather than relying on decorative Australian flags printed on the front by offshore parent companies. Third, if you are buying decaf, check if the label explicitly mentions the Swiss water process or chemical-free extraction. If it does not say, assume synthetic solvents like methylene chloride were used. Fourth, avoid judging quality by glass weight or embossed lids, because packaging design is often the single most expensive component of premium-priced instant coffee. Fifth, when buying pods, ensure a verified recycling collection program is clearly printed on the box, because standard Australian yellow lid bins cannot process loose coffee capsules. Sixth, never assume a $12 price tag guarantees superior beans, as blind lab testing proves $4 store brands regularly beat luxury imported labels. The ultimate takeaway from this investigation is simple. The modern supermarket aisle is engineered to exploit your fatigue and trust. Multinational food conglomerates spend millions studying your shopping habits, wrapping cheap commodity Robusta beans in glossy marketing, heritage claims, and inflated price tags to make you think you are buying luxury. But once you strip away the gold foil and test what is actually inside the cup, the optical illusion collapses completely. Stopping corporate deception starts with changing how you vote with your wallet every single week at Coles, Woolworths, or Aldi. Thank you for watching and standing up for consumer transparency. If this video opened your eyes and saved you money on your weekly grocery bill, share it right now with a friend or family member who still insists that expensive instant coffee tastes better. Drop a comment below and tell me, which coffee jar is sitting in your kitchen bench right now? And are you swapping it out on your next shop? Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss our next deep dive into corporate product tricks. Stop paying for the packaging, start tasting the coffee, and keep demanding the real truth.